Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. There's a fight that might slip under your radar. It almost slipped under mine. That's between Lawrence Okolie over in Poland. He takes on Lukasz RozanskI for the WBC Bridgerweight title, 12-round contest. Now, I'm not going to try and sort of put any kind of spin on this. Lawrence Okolie is a remarkably boring fighter to watch. And Lukasz RozanskI is no great shakes either. I mean, he's more entertaining, that's for certain. He is actually quite an entertaining fighter. But I thought I'd do a quick preview of this fight. Rosanski is undefeated, 15 wins, no draws, no defeats, 14 KOs. Last seen knocking out Alen Babic in a round. That was back in April of last year. But he's been remarkably inactive. Which Okolie hasn't been particularly active, but he's certainly been more so than RozanskI. RozanskI, if you go back to, like I say, Babic was in 2023. To find his next fight, you'd have to go back to 2021, which was nigh on 2 years, almost 2 years before the Babic fight. And that was another one round against Artur Szpilka. He then had two fights in 2020, but they were against nondescript opposition and a total of under 4 rounds. Well, it was, both were 2-round stoppages, so less than 4 rounds of action. He had one fight in 1919. Again, I can't remember the guy's name. Ogonu, I think his name might have been. I can't remember. Didn't know anything about him at the time. But that was a 4-round KO. And then if you go back to 2018, he had 2 fights. But again, we're talking Michael Sprott, who he did in 2 rounds. Another guy who I'd never heard of, who he did in 1 round. I think he might have had a 3rd fight, which was, again, these are all very, very early stoppages. And in order to find him going beyond 4 rounds, well, I think I'm right in saying he's never been beyond 4 rounds. I'm trying to think back on his career, RozanskI. I don't think he's ever been beyond 4 rounds. This is unbelievable, really, when you consider that he is a supposed world champion. But the quality of his opposition is low. He's been a pro for 9 years, getting on for 9 years. He's only had 15 fights. He's campaigned at heavyweight. This really is a sort of damning indictment over the Bridgerweight division, isn't it? Let's be honest here. And Alen Babic as well, to go out in a round against this guy. But the Szpilka fight, if I remember rightly, was a bit of fun, because that was a bit of give and take. Is that the fight I'm thinking of? But if you sift through his resume, there's really nothing to it at all. There's nothing to it at all. And that's the knock against RozanskI. Now, I imagine that anyone who's picking Okolie, that would be the reason, because of Rozanski's lack of opposition, complete inactivity, and what is there that you can pluck out of his resume to say this guy is a genuine world-class fighter? He may be in the world of the Bridgerweights, but a lot going on there, is there? Now, Okolie, as I say, just a remarkably dull fighter, unbelievably dull. We all know about him, most of us probably know about him moving from Matchroom and DAZN over to Sky and Boxer. He had a couple of fights in 2021. I think he was still with Matchroom at the time. In 2022, was it Sislak he fought in 2022? I think it was. And Sislak is a good European level fighter. That was in defence of his WBO cruiserweight title. He originally won the title against Krzysztof Glowacki. That was in 2021, wasn't it? And then, because he was still with Matchroom then, definitely. He stopped Glowacki in 6 rounds. The Prasovic fight was 3 rounds. That was the same year. Then the Dylan Prasovic, that was, and then the Sislak one would have been 2022. So I think Sislak was the last fight he had under the Matchroom banner. And then he moved on to Boxer, and he defended his title against David Light, and won a very, very unimpressive, deeply boring 12-round decision against an unheralded New Zealander who actually suffered, a brain bleed. He suffered some sort of quite serious injury afterwards, and that was the end of his career, but thankfully not his life, thank goodness. And then his second fight under Boxer was, as we know, to Chris Billam-Smith, and that was in 2023 as well. So he had those two fights in 2023. David Light was undefeated, but had never really fought anyone. Okolie won most of the rounds, 2/3 of the rounds maybe 116, 112, 117, 111, something like that, I think. But against Billam-Smith, I mean, it was an absolute disaster. It was an absolute hug fest. Okolie was down, I think, was it 3 times legitimately, and then another couple where he was just sort of bundled to the floor. He showed very limited punch resistance. Billam-Smith isn't regarded as a banger, although he hits respectably. But we wouldn't call him a one-punch knockout artist, would you? And he was lighting up Okolie. And yes, Okolie was a very, very big cruiserweight. So I suppose this inevitable move to Bridgerweight is an opportunity to gain a second so-called world title. I think that was it the third or fourth defence of his title when he lost his WBO title to Billam-Smith. Had he outstayed his welcome at cruiser in terms of the weight? Because sometimes you can have a belt and you can just desperately want to hang on to it because it's a cash cow, but you really should have moved up sooner. Do you know what I mean? I wonder if that had happened to Okolie. So you have this, by the way, the Billam-Smith fight was a year ago. It was May of last year. So he's been inactive for a year. He does have a new trainer in Joe Gallagher, having moved away from Sugar Hill. He is, I think he's 31 now. Dimensions-wise, he's certainly bigger than Rozanski, because Rozanski's only 6'1", and yet Rosanski is the one who's fought at heavyweight. He's been in the 230s at times, even the 240s on one or two occasions. Now, this is in Poland as well. Do you know where I'm going with this? It's not looking good for Okolie, I don't think. And even now, the only thing that stops me from saying that from being confident that Rozanski will win is that, again, he hasn't faced anyone. There's just so much inactivity. And I forgot to look up how old he is. I think he's mid-30s, isn't he? He's not spring chicken. Now, you could argue, if he's that age, that the lack of activity to some degree preserves the body. But the guy's, I'm absolutely certain, I should have checked this, but I'm absolutely certain he's never been beyond 4 rounds. I can't remember a single occasion when he went beyond 4 rounds in his whole career. And a lot of his fights are like 1-rounders and 2-rounders. So if Okolie can get him into the middle rounds, then maybe he can have some fun. Maybe he can take advantage. But Okolie, with this extremely negative, almost terrified to be hit attitude, this, will he be able to resist at 6'5" in against a 6'1" guy, not draping his arms over him, doing that octopus routine and grabbing hold of him the moment Rozanski gets anywhere near him? He's in Poland. Okolie's got to let this hang out. I mean, otherwise he's going to get easily outpointed, and it will be another humiliation. Both guys are orthodox fighters, so that shouldn't be an issue. There's no southpaws to worry about. See, Okolie, there were times during his matchroom days when he flattered to deceive, against like a Dylan Prasovic. He did well against there, and the Glowacki fight, he looked all right there. Even against Waddy Camacho, who was past his best and never really a killer. He picked up the Commonwealth title from Camacho, stopped him in 4 rounds. But then you go back to fights like the Matty Askin one. That was a terrible, terrible contest. The Isaac Chamberlain. Isaac Chamberlain, that was a bad fight. The style just didn't gel. What I should say is Lawrence Okolie's style didn't gel. But then I think he followed that, because I was sitting ringside for it, the Luke Watkins fight. And Watkins at the time was undefeated, and he got rid of Watkins in 3 rounds. I thought that was a pretty good performance. That was, well, far back we go in 2018, something like that. I sat ringside for that one, and quite enjoyed it. I thought, oh, okay, this guy's got something about him, but he's so erratic. So who do I think's going to win? Well, I don't say this with any great confidence, and definitely I think if Rozanski goes into those middle rounds, he's going to be in territories where he's never been before against a guy who is probably going to carry the higher weight well. It might improve his punch resistance. Okolie, it might even improve his power. Rozanski, again, used to the bigger fellas, but very low level. No one anywhere near Okolie's perceived class. I think if Rozanski can jump on Okolie, and I don't think it'll stop him early. I'd be surprised about that. But if he can put him back in his mental box, contain him and say, I've got something for you, and make Okolie revert to type, which is very, very defensive, afraid of being hit, totally thinking about defense and not offense. If he can do that, I think he'll win a points decision. Could he stop Okolie? Possibly, but I think a points decision for Rozanski is probably the most likely scenario. However, if Okolie can get the aging Rozanski into those middle rounds and not revert back to type, not become too negative, to not just shut down his offense entirely in favour of just spoiling his way through the fight. If he can do that, I think there's a very reasonable chance that Okolie himself could outpoint Rozanski. Maybe stop him. I don't know. There's so many. Rozanski's such over the longer distance, over the 8-round distance, is such an unknown commodity. Whereas Okolie, at least, whatever you say about him, has been 12 rounds, on several occasions. I think Okolie might be able to stop him or outpoint him. If it goes the distance, we're in Poland. I don't fancy anything that's even remotely 50-50 going Okolie's way. Put a gun to my head. When all is said and done, I would say I think Rozanski's probably going to pinch this on points. It might be controversial, but I can see him winning on points. And I don't particularly rate Rozanski high. I just think there were too many question marks over Lawrence Okolie. I've got no faith in Lawrence Okolie to do the right thing in that ring. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Rozanski to win a decision, close one, 115, 113, 116, 112 maybe, that sort of area. But what do you think? I mean, first of all, do you think this would be a good fight? I'll settle for that, regardless of who wins. I don't care who wins. I'll happily be proven wrong if it's a good fight. Because, again, I don't even have any faith in Okolie to deliver entertainment. Never mind a good performance. Sometimes fighters don't do good performances, but they at least show some sort of, entertainment value. Okolie needs this win, though, to salvage his career. He's 31 now, and I know Rozanski's older, but Jesus. When boxers signed him, Ben Shalom said, he needs to be the face of British boxing. You've got to be kidding me, mate. I mean, since Joshua Buatsi came over to boxer, he hasn't torn up any trees. He's never even had a world title fight, which he should have done. Olympic bronze medalist, the age he is in his early 30s. But he has at least, the Dan Aziz fight was very entertaining. Okolie, another bad performance, and your career is dead in the water, mate. So you better produce. But what do you think? Comments below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, and please hit the like button if you don't mind. That'll be a big help. I will read your comments. Who do you think is going to win? How do you think they're going to win? Why do you think they're going to win? And most importantly of all, do you expect there to be any entertainment value in this fight whatsoever? I'll be interested to get your take on that as well. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you as always, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.